Hey guys, if you're looking down, your heart's feeling empty, come have a laugh with us, I'm Shadow Soul 720. So, I'm going to talk to you guys today about university. So, I live in Tasmania, Hobart, Australia. Not specifically Hobart, but you know the area. So, when it comes to university, and this is only my own experience, but you guys may or may not know that I haven't had a very nice experience with the university. I don't really like it a lot. I have graduated from there and it took quite a while. And a lot of that came from things like mandatory courses that were required for me to do specific things. So for example, I really like psychology. And then the unit being very different from what it was ascribed to me as throughout before that time period of learning and education throughout years prior. And it wasn't just that, but there was other issues that I've had with university over the years that I just really don't like. And again, you know, it might just be UTAS because it's the only university in Tasmania, but it might be viable in other situations, right? And this is probably not very important. It's a little political. It's just the university has also bought up many of the places around Tasmania, around, like, for example, Hobart. So it's got a lot of wealth, status and power at the moment, which is why if I say anything against it badly, that could be bad for my reputation in future years, but at the same time it's also about learning, changing, adapting. And if this video helps to change things at the university, as well as helping other students and people in similar positions, that also helps a lot too. So let me just say that outright first. So, problems with the university. Like I said, I've got a lot, but I'll start with this one because it just occurred to me today, and that's probably the only one I'll do for this video. If you guys want to know more on what I think about university and why I think it's kind of dumb, you can look into many things, like the cost, or how, like, I feel like university learning doesn't really necessarily get you jobs or get you to where you want to be, and you just end up with huge debts and wasted time, and I don't think it's really valuable in society these days, much. Unless it's specifically for things such as being a doctor or being... There was another example I had, but for now, a lawyer. There we go. Something like, you know, law, where you have to learn a lot. Doctor certificate? Doctrine? I forget the word for it, but those sorts of things where you need to know a lot of specific medical terminology and, we'll just say science, you know, medical science, so that you don't harm other people when you do your job properly. That's important. But for basically everything else, I feel like university is not important at all, and it's just a huge waste, a time waster. Okay, now that that's off my chest, the real topic of this video, for this one. So I've come to the realization that a lot of university teachers, in my experience, don't teach properly. They're teachers, but they're not very good at teaching. What do I mean by this? So what I mean by, and this doesn't just apply to university, this can apply to high school, primary school, anywhere, any sort of schooling, you know, even yeah. So there's going to be a lot of teachers out there that know a lot of information. They know what they're doing, they know their subjects, they've passed lots of years of education themselves. They're good at it, they might be great at it. That's good, that's fine. But my problem is that a lot of teachers also don't seem to know how to teach properly, right? So they've been taught all the information, all the knowledge, and then they teach people, they're like, here, just read these books, it's what I had to do. But then the students look at the books and they're like, I can't make heads or tails of this, you know? And the teachers kind of just expect them to go through all the same learning they had to do because they had to do it that way. Or, you know, there's lots of other circumstances for why they'll be teaching the way they are, or whatever. One example I do have, though, is if you look at, like, some of the questions for specific units and specific classes, sometimes they're worded really dumb. Like, it's like, you know, sometimes they'll use those really high vocabulary, philosophical sort of terms. Well, not even philosophical, but just words out there like, Oh, I don't know. Is rhombus a word? Like, hang on, let me look at one. Formative. That's a word, right? So someone could say, identifying formative assessment activities. 4 words. That's not even the whole sentence, that's only half of it. Identifying formative assessment activities. You try to break that down for hours as a student. You look at the question over and over, you keep reading it, you don't even understand. Like, it's fine if you know what each of those words means individually, but you're wasting so much time having to break it down. And a lot of people, when they're writing these questions, they might just feel like, I've got to define it well, and this is how I would say it, and sound smart and intelligent for university standards. That's bullshit. I'm just going to straight up say that. Apologies for that, especially if you're pretty young and you're watching this, but... Identifying formative assessment activities. So if you break it down, which is what you have to do in order to pass university, because you can't get through the bullshit if you don't, right? Apologies again. So identifying formative assessment activities. What does this mean? So you're identifying something. So you're assessing something, you're looking at something, right? So you're figuring out formative, which means, like, I don't even know what that means in the context, right? But if I had to try and think about what it means formative as in it's providing information that's going to inform people. It's going to be used to inform people. So you're looking at something, it needs to be able to inform people of other things. Assessment, so we know what that is, right? And then activities. So identifying formative assessment activities. So you're looking at or for assessment activities. So we can just cut the activities part, right? Say assessments, because they're an activity. So you're looking at assessments that will inform others. That's it. So identifying formative assessment activities just means you're looking at assessments, you're informing others, you're identifying them, really, you're just explaining assessments. That's really what that means, right? You're explaining assessments in a way that other people can understand. And this whole assignment is talking about this is what you need to do, right? But they can't even explain that clearly. They want you to explain that clearly by using all these highfalutin words, right? Highfalutin just means huge, giant words, right? That can be explained with, like, shorter words. That's pretty much what highfalutin means. It's just like... it's like the most, stuck up nose sort of word of highfalutin. You could substitute it for lots of little words that people understand, but I'm going to use the big word, So, my whole point is, that's only half of a sentence. There'll be paragraphs of information on what you should be doing probably for your assignment. But you can shorten those down, right? You can shorten it. And you can just say, hey, provide information on this assessment, or the assessment tasks even, right? That's way shorter, that's way simpler. Everyone's going to be able to understand that. So my problem is that a lot of people don't understand the most important thing sometimes with teaching is communication. It's telling others how to do the things, right? And you guys are probably there listening to me before repeating, identifying formative assessment activities and being like, this is garbage, I'm not going to have to learn about this. And you're completely right. You don't need to think about this video for ages and be like, what does that mean? How do I break it down? You don't have to waste your time. If people would just say it straight up and say, hey, can you explain these assessments? Yeah, sure, can do. Don't even have to think about that. I can get straight to studying. I can tell you exactly what these assessments are. But they don't do that, do they? So studying's a huge hassle and it's a bit of a mind game, and no one wants to give you direct, straight answers, but the whole point of going to education systems is to learn. And they're not transferring that knowledge to you properly, which means they're failing as teachers. And I don't want to break the fourth wall too much, but this is... The example I got, right, that was from a teaching assignment. The whole thing is based around teaching students how to teach other people. But if you're repeating... But if you can't tell people how to teach properly, if you can't communicate well, if you're not teaching them how to learn in an effective way, and if you can, something that's personalized is really going to be helpful as well. Right? If you know they're dyslexic or something, you're going to try not to add those big words. But of course, society's as it is, and one teacher's assigned to like a class of 30 plus or something. So it's hard to be that specific and personalized. But if you can, it helps a lot. But to start with, if you can simplify things, everyone's going to understand. So, why do teachers do this? Why do they make it so confusing? And also, this isn't just a teaching example, because they do this in everything, right? I studied psychology, they did this. I studied sociology, they did this. And you got to break down all the little terms, which sometimes terms are important, right? Like in sociology, if you learn about structure and agency, those are important terms to know. Breaking down the other little bits, right? Can matter, but doesn't always. Especially when we're trying to make information as accessible as possible so we can learn a lot and so people can pass. My point is, this happens in most subjects, from what I've seen. Not all, but most. And it would be really helpful if people just simplified questions, they simplified terms, they told you straight up what you're going to be studying, what it's like, what it is. Do you understand me? And a lot of teachers will do this sort of thing, and I think it's because that's how they were taught. They've got these ideas about university, etc., wherever they're teaching, that it has to be high standard stuff. They use the big terms. They're like, this sounds smart. It is smart. I need to convince my audience that what I'm writing is smart. Which sounds right, and that's how they learn. But that's not helping anyone. And they're just repeating what their predecessors taught them, right? Like, oh, you have to do exams for hours. And then some people will realize, like, okay, exams are awful, they're stressful, no one likes them. Homework is bad. We're not going to do this because it was awful when we had to do it. And some people make implemented changes. But you can't implement everything. When you're trying to change part of the system, you can't change it all at once, right? You can't just be like, okay, so we've got fried rice. It's got peas in it, we're going to take out the peas. Like, you can do that, that's fine. But you can't say, okay, we're having fried rice, we're going to make it out of potato. That's doable, sure. But it's going to take a lot longer to implement that change than just removing the peas. And I know that's a weird example, but that's also why I'm saying that confusing teachers, it's not their fault, right? Like, there's three things that can go wrong for why teachers don't teach properly, and that can be, hey, they were taught that way to start with, they're copying their predecessors. It can be that the system that they're teaching in, the organisation or whatever, has lots of complicated rules and procedures, they have to work around that. It might be that they think they have to use big words and make things very complicated, and they can't teach properly, because that's what they're expected. I mean, and a mixture between those two things is also the curriculum, right? You have to teach so many things as a teacher, and it's kind of working around that. It's being like, okay, we have to explain algebra to our students today. Algebra is kind of complicated to some people, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I've got to do it. But explaining to them algebra and huge words that they're never going to use again in their lives, most likely, might not be the smartest way. If they want to learn those huge words, they'll pick it up. You don't have to force it into their brains, because if they're like me, they're going to forget most of their learning from education relatively fast and not have to use it again. But then if they do a refresher, they might hold on to it, right? And that's all that really matters. Because even when you do training with like an organisation or something, if you don't go on placement, if you don't go on prac, if you don't go into the workplace, you just do the theory, give it like a year's time, you're not going to remember much of the theory again. You'll be fine on refreshers, but you'll forget it. Which is why a lot of people say don't have a gap year from uni or wherever you're going, college, etc. Because it'll be difficult. And that's true, but gap years are also important. Especially if you need them. And you're in a semi-time of crisis and you may already be there without realising it. But today's not so much about mental health, it's about teachers not teaching properly and how no teacher, because there is teachers that do this, but a lot of teachers don't seem to teach properly. They know what they're doing, they can teach this subject well, they sound smart, it sounds up to the grade, they're teaching at the curriculum or higher, but students aren't learning it, and their grades are down here still. They're not even reaching near the standard because they don't understand the question. Anyway, I just wanted to let you Taz know about this, as well as anyone that's in education, just because it is an issue and it's a struggle, and a lot of people won't even realise it themselves that they're doing it. They'll just be like, why are my students failing so much? I don't understand. I'm teaching them all the correct things. And it might just be because it's not simple enough. It's not broken down enough. They're not learning the knowledge. You've got to take a step back, think about it, be like, why aren't they learning? Ask them. My opinion is ask them, believe what they're saying. Okay? If they say that the work's too tough, then it's probably too tough. And if they're saying it's too tough so that they get to do less work, you'll probably notice that. You'll probably notice how much more free time they have or something. You'll notice. You guys aren't dumb. You'll pick it up. Don't be afraid of missing that. But if they say that it seems too complicated for them, help them break it down. It's a matter of asking, judging, making sure that you're constantly reflecting on where your class is at. If you've got a set template and you just let the class go every year, you're like, okay, I'll just give them this grade, this test, and this test, and this test, and I will just reflect on their progress at the end of the tests. That's a standardized way of doing it, so there's nothing wrong from a technical standpoint of standardization and organizations, but you're not going to be able to see if your students are actually learning or if they need that help before the test, which is the most crucial, important time. I know that for me, before exams and tests, I would have loved some advice and some help from teachers. And I know a lot of teachers out there just say, if you need help, come to me. And that's good, and some students actually do use that and they appreciate that. But when it comes to the marking of a test or an assessment, after the very first test or assessment, check with your class how they found it. If it was worded okay, if it was a little bit rough to understand, because communication is one of the most important things we have. And although a lot of academia is in English and written literacy sort of forms, which can be very difficult for a range of students, especially if they learn differently, like say hands-on, they're already going to be at a disadvantage. So making sure that we communicate, say English or whatever language we're teaching, in a way that they'll understand is crucial. Because a lot of students are very smart. And I have a lot of faith in lots of people. But even if a student's looked at all the notes, they know all the same knowledge that you do, they can understand it well, and they can speak it well to you too. They know what they're talking about when they talk to someone else about the topic. If they don't understand what you're asking them, if they don't understand what it is you're looking for that you want to grade them on, they will fail or they will do very, very poor. One of the only ways I passed a lot of things was that I had a tutor, and my tutor would break down the question for me and then help me go through that. What we had assessed the question, we had to get a summary of the questions so that I could understand them. And I find that because I sometimes tutor people in different uni classes and stuff myself a little bit, I have to constantly break down questions for them, and it is awful for them. And a lot of them feel like they're really dumb. They're not dumb at all. I 100%. If you guys think you're dumb right now for not understanding uni questions, you are incorrect, 100%. Let me just tell you, you're not dumb. No one's really dumb. If you didn't study the knowledge that you were supposed to learn, that just means that you're not very invested in that area and you should probably study some more. You don't have enough knowledge on it yet. But that doesn't mean you're dumb. That just means you haven't been motivated enough to study into that area, or that you don't understand the information. And if you don't understand the information, you need to get help. Your teachers should be there to study and help you study, right? If they're not helping you study, if they're not helping you learn, you're not gaining anything from that institution. And I would be looking into somewhere or something else. And what I found with UTAS, for example, is there wasn't a lot of help. They said there was a lot of help, right? Like there'd be counsellors and stuff on standby, and I did appreciate that, and that is a nice thing that they have there. But there's not enough focus on the teachers actually being able to help the students themselves, and especially in a one-on-one manner. But that makes sense because it's hard to divide one person's time among like 30 in a class or something. But if we could allocate something like extra staff to just helping students with problems, that would be amazing. We need like pseudo tutors just to help relay information, and then the tutors that actually have this academic background, or they have some sort of what's the word? If they've got some sort of reasoning, right, as to why they belong in that area. Like they've got previous successes in academia, and you can see that they're fairly bright and they know what they're talking about. If they can't understand, if a previous graduate or something can't understand questions for a student that hasn't graduated yet, there is a problem. All right, because every graduate should be able to understand what is being asked of a student for a question, all right, especially for big exams and tests and such. If a previous graduate, and I've met many, who don't understand what's being asked of a student, that student can't be expected to pass, right? They can't be expected to have done their best on any test, or for their results to actually matter or amount to much at all. I mean, you'd hope they'd amount to something, but you can't expect them to pass a test when they and previous graduates can't understand what's required of them. Previous graduates don't have to understand the knowledge, they just have to understand what is being required. The student should already have the knowledge and be able to fill in the questions if they know what's being asked. We really need to fix this in our academic system, and I'm really hoping and relying on you guys to help me get there. Because we have to do this as a community, as a society. We need to bring this together and get some action moving. I'd put a hashtag to this, but I don't actually have one right now. If you guys agree, I guess the best way is to share this video wherever you can. Try and get some publicity for it going, so that we can pursue this change indefinitely. I thought of a quote yesterday, and that quote is, "Living differently occurs when we think differently." So if you want to live differently, you've got to think differently. And I think it's time we moved on from tedious tests that no one can make out what's wanted from them. What's the point of a test? You know? Sometimes it's to come to your own answers, right? But it shouldn't be to understand what the other person is saying. They are there to guide you, not to get in the way of your education. Okay. On that, I'll finish. Thank you guys so much. Leave a comment below if you like. Smash the bell or whatever people say. And support each other and take care. And I'll catch you all somewhere. Peace, guys. Bye.